Live. And I
Yep.
think we are live. Good morning, everybody, and good afternoon to you guys. I know we're in two different parts of the world. This is, Saturday morning with a side of tech, episode one. I gotta stop looking down. Gotta look up. You guys are it's a funky thing. I want to say good morning and good day to rirozizo right here with us from another XCA TV producer. And then we have Altaf right here also joining us all the way around the world. So we have a very good panel to start our first episode. You guys want to maybe introduce yourself a little bit, or rirozizo? I'm sure people know you.
Not so much. Well, I'm rirozizo. I live in Lebanon, which has very bad internet connection, but I do tech videos on YouTube. My channel name is rirozizo, obviously. So that's pretty much it.
Altaf?
Yeah, hey guys, my name is Autumn and I'm from India. So I basically do tech videos and stuff, and my channel name is Alts Techness.
Cool. And just to kind of repeat myself, this is TK from XCA TV. I have my own channel as well, TK Bay on YouTube. So we all have our own channels to be able to basically post our own content. And this broadcast is going to be recorded and can be viewed later on my channel, and we'll also link it to the other guys. The main reason we're here to talk today, we want to talk a little bit about mobile architecture, CPUs, specifically the 32-bit versus 64-bit discussion, or I'd say hot topic. A lot of people like to talk about that. We're gonna really try to have a little bit of a discussion between us and see what do we think. Is it something that it's worth? Is it not worth it? Should you care that your new phone comes with a 64-bit processor or not? So we'll try to tackle that today. And then we'll open up obviously to Q&As at the end. If you guys have any questions, please post them either directly in the video link or the actual Hangout link, or directly on the landing page on Hangout, so that way we can try to answer them at the end of the video. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we start?
I just want to say I'm really excited to do this. This is my first time doing a Hangouts on Air event, and that's awesome.
Actually, it's the same thing for me. I've done interviews before, but I've never done them live. I've done them more to rebroadcast and edit. So this is actually the first one we're doing live, and hopefully we'll get some good traction out of this.
Hopefully.
This will be completely new for me.
So let's go ahead and dive in, I guess. The first thing we want to make sure that we're clear at least about what we're trying to talk about today is we're talking mobile CPUs, mobile processors, 32-bit versus 64-bit in your mobile devices. Obviously, the discussion can go into many other segments when you go other desktop processors and so on, and those are different. The CPUs, or the systems that we're talking about, more considered to be SoCs, system on a chip. So those are the ones that you usually find in your Android devices, any mobile device that you're holding in your hand or you use. You're going to have something in there. The main thing, obviously, is that the CPU, what we're looking at, is the center of all of it. It's basically what does all the actual calculations, pulls the data from RAM, executes the commands, and what has lately been in actually a big fad, I would say, or at least big, I say key word or buzzword that a lot of people say is 64-bit processors. We're getting into the next age of mobile processing, and does this really help you? Obviously there's three main ones that we can talk about. We have the 16-bit, which what we used to have, 32-bit, which is commonly available now, and the 64-bit, which is the new one that's coming into the market. It's been around for some time, but it's new. So I guess from a sense of maybe just as a poll, do you guys have any 64-bit processors running on any of your devices, or are you running? Okay, enough said.
Yeah.
So we got the 808 running right there on the G4 over there, so we don't have to flash the G4 over here. And so, Alphas, what are you running as far as your daily driver?
Sorry?
What's your daily driver as far as the phone? What's your main phone, I guess?
Yeah, it's an Indian piece. Euphoria.
Euphoria.
Euphoria, okay. So I think it's a 32-bit processor, right?
No, it's a
I
64-bit.
Oh, is it the new 64? Okay, good. So are you on Android L already, or are you still Are you running a preview?
Yeah, I'm on Android and Lollipop.
Okay, good. I think we're all good. That's
That's
actually all my devices, with the exception of the Nexus 6. I think I'm running M preview on it.
well, it's a
Oh,
32 device anyway, the Nexus 6.
yes, but the as far as operating system, it's the only one. I think most of us are on L now since it's
Right.
been out for some time, and M is out, knocking on the door. So that's what I meant. But I guess I'll open up a little bit to you guys. I guess Riro, what do you think as far as 64 versus 32, as far as the this system on a chip? Is that really important? Do you think?
Um, well, as far as bit size, which
Mm-hmm.
is 32 and 64, it's not really important. But the advantages of 64 over 32 might get important in the future, maybe, because, well, as we are seeing, the Note 5 just uh, supports 4 gigs of RAM,
Mm-hmm.
I think,
Yeah,
right?
both
I heard
Note
that
5
somewhere
and the
that,
S6 Plus. Yeah,
right, the S6 Plus, the S6 Edge Plus, or whatever,
yeah. Sorry, the S6 Edge
both
Plus. I forgot that.
both have 4 gigs of RAM. And if we do the calculations, the 32-bit CPU, what's actually 32-bit CPU and what is 64-bit?
Mm-hmm.
32-bit is the size of the registers in the CPU chip itself. And so 32 bits can hold about 4 billion different combinations. That's 2 to the power 32. So that's 4 billion, that's 4 gigabytes of RAM.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 4 gigabytes of 4 billion addresses inside the RAM that we can see from the CPU. Now, this is the limit of the 32-bit CPU. So we're currently at the limits of 32-bit SoCs. But that's not really a problem because the Note 5 and the S6 Plus, S6 Edge Plus are both have both 64-bit processors.
Yes,
Now
they're both running
64,
the 7420 Exynos processors.
right,
Yeah,
which are 64-bit processors.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now a 64-bit
Our
is
first
actually
technical.
2 to the power 64, which so it's 18. The number is really big. It's 18 quintillion 446 quadrillion trillion billion million thousand, and it's really huge. Like, you can get unlimited RAM support from that, and we're only talking about one side of 64-bit CPUs, which is just RAM capacity, which is nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
Does
that's
it does
the
it does it impact in your opinion at least the number of cores that when we start hearing cores, as far as I know it's the different same architecture, it's a 64-bit processor, but now we're talking octa-cores, hexacores, quad cores. We're no longer impressed with a single core processor.
right. Altaf, you have something to say? I think.
yeah. This whole 64 process is actually started by Apple, and
Right.
I don't really think that we kind of need 64-bit at this stage.
Okay. Well, I mean, true. Apple did start the main wave of it. I think that's the main thing. I think was it the Cortex A9.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I guess Cortex A9 for Apple.
Mm-hmm. Well, so and again, they're only still running on 1 gig of RAM, so it's kind of an interesting concept. All these upgrades they upgrade the CPU, but they're still using what 32-bit needs at a bare minimum.
And this will basically answer your question, which you asked me earlier, which is the number of cores really needed, or is the bigger the RAM, the better the phone will get? Well, it's not really the focus, because I think you can beat a Galaxy S6 with a Moto G, I think. Because it's all about software optimizations. It's all about how the software is dealing with the hardware, and how the hardware's architecture to get the data flow from the storage to the CPU to the RAM and then back to the CPU for processing. That's all more important than the number of cores you have.
So when you're looking at your device, even though we really mostly, when we hear about, with our devices, a lot of people are worried, are concerned. They're like, well, I want an octa-core, I want an hexa-core. And the simple example would be, really the LG G4. It decided not to go with the hexa-core, setup. I'm sorry, octa-core. It did go with the 6 cores over 8, and it still runs as fast and it still performs the exact same way, and you really wouldn't even notice it. I just from a, just because I want to make sure that people understand this, when you think of a CPU, when you think of an architecture of the 3264, my Nexus 6, as you stated, is a 32-bit processing device. With the right set of hardware, with the right set of software that marries to that hardware, let's say a custom ROM, it could outperform a hexa-core processor running the latest TouchWiz or the latest LG UI. And that's because, as you said, it's the customizations. It's the optimizations in the back end, how things are managed, how RAM is managed, how applications are kept in the background, and it has less RAM. I don't have 4 gigs of RAM as my, so speaking of the S6 Edge Plus, I don't have as many RAM as on this one yet, but it is optimizations. It has to be optimized. You can't forget about the software when you think about hardware. But I guess maybe we can look into Altas.
Yeah,
Gaurav, do you
even
have
I.
anything to say?
Yes, I agree with it. Since the Apple, which they created apps and they create the operating system, so they can optimize their apps and everything with 1 gig of RAM, and it can compare to the latest Android phones which are present till this date, maybe Samsung Galaxy S6, and they run pretty smooth. We don't find any major lags. So I just think the software optimization is the main thing, and I don't think the CPU architecture really matters. Apple have proved it.
Well, so that can bring us back and forth. So there is me. So I feel very strong about the fact that I think 32-bit is really where we are and what we need in the current state. And we can talk a little bit more about that. And I think, as Riro mentioned, it's really the amount of processing power and what you can run and how much memory you're able to use as far as the computing power for the registers on the CPU. And the fact of the matter is, the hardware is way ahead of what our software is right now. And I think we maybe need to talk a little bit as far as the CPU size. I mean, we talk about different processing. There's different I guess. There's different ARM processing. Yeah. So maybe can you elaborate a little bit on that one? What do you think about what really is the difference between ARM 7 and ARM 9 or ARM 8 as far as the CPUs?
I didn't actually research that. I think I didn't really get into the differences between the two architectures, which are ARM 7 and ARM 8.
What I meant to say essentially is, can a current version ARM 7 processor outperform an ARM 8, in your opinion, without researching? I'm just saying personal experience.
Well,
because you've had an Nexus 4, you've had an Nexus 4, you've used an LG G4, so those two kind of be a good basis of testing.
Yeah, I was gonna answer with exactly that actually. I had a Nexus 4, which is a 2012 device, and now I've moved on to an LG G4, which is a mid 2015 device, and the Nexus 4 feels snappier because it's all about LG's bad software optimizations and Samsung's worse software optimizations. It's all about the heavy skin that you're already putting into a very big operating system, which is Lollipop. Lollipop is a huge operating system, and then you're still adding your custom apps and your custom LG bloatware.
Well, not only that, I remember. Did they also rewrite the actual art? Even the runtime is rewritten by the manufacturer. It's not just the skin anymore. They're going directly into how the actual system is running. And I guess one of the main reasons why Exposed, at least for me, because it's a big thing for me, hasn't transitioned to Lollipop as smoothly as it was on KitKat or even older versions of Android. But that's a discussion for a different day. I'm not going to try to muddy the water with many things. I can segue with many things, but I guess with you, Altaf, what's your experience with? I guess with your new device, Do you feel like it's better? Is it work better for you? Obviously, it's much better processing power, but do you find that your old system could have outperformed it? Is it closer to stock? Are you running a custom ROM?
Yeah, before this phone, I was using my Sony Xperia M device.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a Sony stock ROM. I loved the device when I first bought it because that was my first Android mobile. So when afterwards I lost that phone and I purchased this new phone. Now I feel the difference between Sanajam versus a stock Sony ROM. I
Yes.
feel the lot snappier. It opens the apps as perfect. Just I love this phone right now.
It's it's always going to be the challenge between the two. And for me, the last thing, and I'll close this up for the last time. I don't want to extend it too long. My Nexus 6 still snappier than any of the other devices when I compare it, even to the new S6 Edge Plus. I'm looking at it. It doesn't compare.
I can definitely bet on it. I can definitely bet on that. I've experienced this and I feel with you. I actually now the reason I bought the LG G4 and not an upgraded Nexus because I've seen how Google screwed up with the stock base operating system and all these memory leaks which Lollipop had back when 5.0 was released.
Yep.
And I've seen how OEMs actually fixed Google's mistakes, which has led me to buy a very locked up device, which is the LG G4.
It's one of those things you're always going to have to worry about. But I guess with the differences between 32 and 64-bit, do you think do you have any other concerns or any other comments you'd like to add to that one, at least, to kind of circle back to we don't want to stray off too far. It can turn into another conversation.
Right, of course. We can talk about this forever. Well, 64 versus 32 or 32 versus 64, it doesn't really matter whether your CPU is 32-bit or 64-bit. It really doesn't matter. All it matters is the software any good? Is the architecture any good? Can I open two apps at least at the same time without the background app getting killed, like what we're seeing on the Note 5? I think Droidwater X did a test with LG G4 versus the Note 5. It was awesome.
I saw that and I was like, crap, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for any. It's sad. It's sad. You put it out the door. You say you have 4 gigs of RAM and you're killing the background apps. It's like makes no sense. I give you this massive playground to play in, but you can't play because you get to decide the moment you're in the background. So
yeah, this is a problem.
So I totally agree with you. I think the fact of the matter that we're saying 64-bit, 32-bit, I think where we are now with the fact of the way at least our apps are compiled and decompiled and run, the system is still running, and they're not even optimized to be 64. That's to even start with. You're really still running applications that were just intended for 32-bit systems that run on 64. It's no different than installing an x86, a 32-bit application on a 64-bit PC. It'll still run, just not going to use all the extra optimizations that you'd expect. Exactly. What do you think, Altaf?
Yeah, the platform is fairly new, so I guess we need to wait for a little bit longer so that the manufacturers produce more and more 64-bit CPUs, and then the app optimization actually starts for 64-bit. But right now we don't have 64-bit a lot, so the app developers are always looking for 32-bit, and so I guess we can see that much difference maybe in the future. I think.
No, I definitely agree. I think it's something that we need to look at again, maybe in another 6 months or so, when more and more devices are like that, are 64-bit optimized, or at least the applications are 64-bit optimized.
At least the operating system is 64-bit optimized.
That's a different discussion for a different subject. If we dive into that, we won't. This will be a long discussion.
Right.
So without further ado on this one, let's go ahead and transition it over to Altaf, and maybe you can help us talk a little bit about What does it mean for in the smartphone world? What is really required to get a system running around the SoC? What do you think?
Sorry?
What are your thoughts as far as what is needed in the world right now as far as a system? I mean, what do you think is an ideal system that you can look at as far as CPU? Is it 64-bit? Is it ARM7, ARM9? What's your thought on that?
Maybe I'll just stick with ARM7 since I have already experienced the 32-bit version of the flavor and everything. I don't feel anything to complain about it. I have never experienced a 64-bit app actually running, so maybe I don't know.
That's true. Well, there isn't really that much from the ones that we use. I would like to see at least some of the main memory hogs to try to be more efficient to try to use the 64-bit systems. Some of the main big guys, but the reality of the matter is, yeah, you're right. 64-bit is it's like getting in a Ferrari, but you're still limited to a certain speed limit. You have to optimize and change the speed limit to kind of get there. So I guess, Riro, what are your thoughts on that part? Do you think we need? I mean, I know you kind of gave your opinion as far as the 32 and the 64-bit, but if you could change the G4 that you have in your hand, do you think it would be more optimized with an ARM7 over the new next generation version?
Well, we have to start at some point to switch over to a new technology. I mean, computers started at 32 bits and then moved on to 64-bit, and I'm sure. Well, I wasn't aware back then, but I'm sure this the topic we're talking about right now, which is we don't really need 64-bit. I'm sure this has happened with computer processors, with laptops and desktops. But we moved on, and all we have right now is a 64-bit desktop CPU.
Yeah, actually, 90, I would say almost like 96, 97% of desktop PCs are 64-bit now. They no longer require the 32. The 32 is still available, but most people don't buy that anymore. It comes pre-installed, like the main manufacturers have switched.
Right, right. And to conclude this, well, whether we actually really need 64-bit, I'm going to ask a question. Do you really play a game that has shaders and like a racing game with a split-second reaction time for the CPU to act up on the car and real physics and all that? Do you really need that on an Nexus 4 or on an LG G4? Like, really, you don't really need that unless you're playing a huge game or unless it's an NVIDIA Shield or something.
Again, yeah, let's not get into the Tegra K1. You're going to the high end of the old processor, so the K1 is a beast of a processor, and yes, that's a processor that will handle all of that.
Well, yeah.
So
but
I think
it's something dedicated to gaming.
I agree. No, I agree.
90%
the tablet is intended for that.
Right, right.
Yes, definitely. So I'm agreeing with you to a certain point. I think the upgrades that we're getting with the 64-bit at least processors have some benefits that are outside of the the 64 versus 32, because what we're talking about essentially is really the ARM background, and there are some optimizations I think that have been implemented with the new CPUs that can help us even in the current generation of systems, and I think that's one of the reasons why it picks up. But I think people just hang on the 32 versus 64, and the reality of the matter is it's the background, it's the other elements in there that help better management of pulling data, running it, and just getting things running correctly on your system. So it's going to be a mixed bag for me. I think I'm probably going to be on the fence. I welcome the new technology and hope in 6 months we can use it to its fullest power, at least. What do you think?
Maybe the games actually make a difference in 64-bit.
I think games will definitely be one of the main ones, and unfortunately, we don't do really any rendering or software processing on our mobile devices, so there really is no big push for that. That's the other thing. Most of us don't use them for processing or post-processing, editing, anything like that.
Android is going in a console-level market, so it's mandatory for them to go for 64-bit as they want to compete with Xbox One and PS4 and the current consoles present there. So I definitely, in the gaming department, 64-bit is needed, and in the real-world scenarios like opening apps and stuff, I don't think 64-bit really matters in that way.
Do you think maybe at some point we'll have a hybrid processing where half a processor is running at 64, the other one running at 32 to optimize better battery life?
Maybe it could be, but
Never heard of
that's
that.
a debate.
Yeah. What was that, Ryder?
I've never heard of that, by the way, this hybrid processing.
The only reason I mention it is because if you think about it, so the ARM7 and upgrade to the new version, they always have, the octa-cores. If you think about it, the octa-cores, the Exynos processors, it's not really 8 cores running at the same speed, right? It's generally a combination of cores and clocked at different speeds. So that was really where my lead was coming from, why I was thinking maybe in the future we'll see something that uses the benefit of both. But you're right, it'll almost be basically like taking a step backwards to say, I can take my old car and put the tires from that on the new car and maybe we'll get something better. But I digress. I think it's a good discussion. It's always good to talk about this and just to think about it and look at things and how things are really working. Let's try to see some of the questions. I think we had a few questions that came in through I guess, on our page, and Ryder was able to pick up a few questions. I guess I'll put that one. Actually, let's go ahead and start off with Altaf. What do you think? What do you think is better? I guess what do you think? What's better about Apple than HTC? Why is Apple doing or succeeding more than HTC? I guess. What are your thoughts on that?
What?
What do you think about why is Apple as a company, as a manufacturer of smartphones, doing better than HTC is doing, where HTC at one point used to be a really big name in the mobile devices world?
Since there are a lot of Apple fanboys over there, I don't think HTC is going in a right direction. It's like now the screens are like Quad HD. Still, the HTC didn't go adopting it, and they did a big mistakes with camera department. As we saw in M8, that's a flagship phone. We still had the not so good camera, and these are the little things that HTC is doing wrong, and this led to the fall of their name. So now it's just like the position of Sony, where Sony is actually making phones which are overpriced. At this budget, we would get best flagship type phone, but HTC and Sony are producing mid-range phone at this price. So I think the price rates maybe differ. And Apple, as you know, we see the app optimization. Apple has control to its operating system, optimization of apps, and optimization of CPU as well. So we see that Apple always runs latest and it's fastest. So maybe that's the difference, in my opinion.
Okay. And Ryder, what are your thoughts? I mean, I personally don't have an Apple device, but I've used them in the past. I guess, but what are your thoughts on that? Why do you think Apple's doing a little bit more than HTC? A lot more better than HTC, I guess.
I actually have an iPad 4, I think 64 gigabytes, which is my brother's, and that's why I don't talk to him anymore. Yeah. Anyway, Apple is better than HTC. I'd rather buy an Apple device than an HTC device because they're both kind of at the same price. Maybe Apple is a bit more expensive, but you get the speed, you get the simplicity, I think, and you get a better camera, better screen. So yeah, Apple is more successful than HTC because HTC's latest flagship, which was the HTC M9, wasn't that much of a big update, of a big jump over the M8. So they lost a lot of users in that department.
Yeah, and as far as the overall, I think in my personal experience, I remember I used to be a big HTC fan back in the old days, and I used to have my my NDA. But the short version, or at least a short answer for me, I think is just Apple is really kind of in many ways a trend center where HTC used to be, and unfortunately, I think HTC, as Alta said, they lost their way in the way their marketing is going, and as you said, and you know, it's they're not really listening to what the users want to get. They're focusing on a way of saying we want to be unique, and unfortunately you lose market share there because not everybody will join you. But hopefully we'll see some changes in the future. I think I saw some leaks of the M10, but that was just some renders. I think,
Well,
end of the
I
year.
really
So,
hope I really hope HTC could step up their game, maybe be a little more developer friendly, because I used to be an HTC fan. I had an HTC Desire Z, and it was awesome. It was simply awesome. HTC makes great quality phones. You hold it in your hand, you can just throw it at the wall, and it'll just bounce
exactly.
back to you
Well,
without
and they
even
really
one scratch.
perfected the sound quality too. If you think about it, they got to the point where with the HTC Boom sound, it's literally a standard for many devices, even on the the Nexus 6, the dual front-facing speakers. That's a direct copy from HTC. So they're not out, but they just need to kind of focus a little bit more on just better packaging and just listening. And I think they're hopefully having some success now, but they need to fix it with the next iteration. Moving
Yeah,
on
only
to the sorry.
HTC.
Yeah.
Yeah, only one suggestion to HTC. Stop
Yeah.
thinking about build quality and start working on the features.
Exactly. And the other thing we have now is we have another question that we got, and it says the gentleman wants to know, wants our opinion, I guess. He wants to buy either an Asus Zenfone 2 gigabyte version or the Moto G3. And his primary requirements is a decent battery life. I think he's asking for our opinion. What do we think as far as which one would be better for him? If you want to start on it, I was gonna throw my hats in the game, and I was gonna say the Moto G would be a better experience for him. But that's just my personal experience.
Well,
I've used
even
Motorola's devices.
I'm actually googling that. Hold on, because I have no idea what the specs are on the sheet.
Okay. Well,
Snapdragon
while you're doing
410
that,
and
yeah.
oh, okay. Go ahead.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
no. I was gonna say, Altaf, you were gonna say something?
Yeah, I would go with Moto G since I have used that Moto G phone. It's basically a stock Google experience. We all love it. So the battery life I have noticed is pretty much greater than the last version, that's G2 from Motorola. And the camera is 13 megapixel, that's fair enough. The quality is good and everything is good. But the thing I like about is it's so lightweight, and it had some own apps like Moto Active and stuff
Yeah.
that makes the thing want to buy that, other than some crappy bloatware.
No, I agree, and I've used Moto. So Motorola Nexus 6 has been my driver for a while, and then I've also used the Moto E. So I've used different versions of Motorola's stock interfaces, and they've always been they're snappy, they're quick, they update very quickly. You're more likely to get an update on the Moto G than you are going to get on the Asus M2, at least not as fast. So in my opinion, I would always stick with the Moto G3 as far as a recommendation, definitely.
Yeah,
Riro, I don't know if you had a...
Yeah, I'd also stick with the Moto G third generation because, well, mainly just seeing the specs here. We have a chipset. We have a Snapdragon 410 chipset on the Moto G, and we have some Intel Atom something on the Zenfone 2. But the Zenfone 2 has a 1080p screen, but the Moto G has a 720p screen. So I guess what Vishal wants is performance and decent battery life. So I'd go with the smaller resolution and the better, of course, better CPU optimization, which is the Snapdragon.
Exactly.
Since Google is backing the Motorola, so that's a big point.
Well, yes, it's something that is always a nice thing. Motorola definitely did step up their game when they came back with after their marriage to Google for that short amount of time. Their update process became much faster, and they became more responsive. I liked that. So then, one of the reasons why I asked earlier, as far as do we really need an octa-core or a hexa-core? We did get a question like that, and I'll post it to you guys here. So do we actually utilize all of our cores? Do you know basically if, and I'm talking without optimization of installing a custom kernel. I'm not talking about a governor. So I'm talking stock, and I'm pointing it directly at you, Riro, because I know you were going to start talking about there are ways to optimize your system to do that. Out of the box, does most of our devices use all the cores?
Fun fact, the LG G4 has HMP. HMP means heterogenic multiprocessing, and what this essentially means that we can run all 6 cores at the same time, which is different from the old Exynos chips. I have no idea if the new Exynos chips by Samsung have had HMP or not, but heterogenic multiprocessing is basically combining the little core, each little core with its big core. So if you have 4 big cores and 4 little cores, little with big, little with big, little with big. So you can make use of all the 8 processors you have, or deca cores or whatever, all at the same time. And it's happening with the LG G4. You have 2 big cores left alone, and then 2 big cores combined with the 2 little cores that we have, which makes 6 cores running at the same time. So that's interesting.
Yeah, no, and I think we saw earlier versions of that when Motorola first introduced the dedicated core for notifications. I don't know if you remember, it was an octa-core with a 9th core sitting just for notification to actually manage the active functionality on their devices to optimize battery life. So it's definitely true. And to actually just throw that real quick to Alta, what are your thoughts as far as usage? Do you know if do you manage your system as far as how many cores you're running? Do you know if your system uses all of them?
No, I don't think we actually need. We will be running all the cores, since the system mean the things which are present are how to phrase this. The system performance are actually on the cores which are present, and the rest of the cores are for the bigger task. So we utilize each and every core.
True. I think I think the original question was wondering is that do we ever have one single thing that runs every single core I mean, unless you're playing a very, very heavy game, and again, very few people, with the new devices with the overheating concerns that are coming up, but again, a discussion for a different day. I don't want to get into those.
810.
So, yeah, 810. I think it's a great system. I think it's a great processor. I'm glad the LG didn't go with it. I did use the LG G Flex 2 at CES earlier this year, and it didn't overheat. I didn't really experience it, but then again, I didn't have a chance to play heavy games or sit with it for a long time. We only had like a couple of minutes to do videos and shoot with it. So, anyways, that's a different thing and overheating on that. But that's an SoC discussion over Snapdragon versus Exynos.
Right.
The next question we have here is, and just to actually kind of throw it out to a lot of people is, yes, what we got here from Raro and from Alta is that you really depends on what you're doing. There are ways to optimize it. The beauty of Android is the fact that you can go to XDA type sites and try to get different customizations to help you, but that takes time, and you need to really understand what you're doing before you go in and dive into trying to modify the operating system or even the kernel be able to basically start getting those benefits. But out of the box, I think we have too many cores to know what to do with. But yes, I agree. The next question we have here is from Greg, and then is what are those 64-bit advantages and how do they stack up against real-world performance and usage? I think we kind of answered that, but I'll throw that over to Alta first, I guess, and see what are your thoughts on that.
Yeah, like I said, the 64-bit usage actually come into play when you play a console type game, but I don't think it's going with the real world scenarios. Like apps, the stuff don't utilize 64-bit. They are stuck with 32-bit. So I think maybe in the future.
Okay. And Raro, what do you think?
You can have a security concern as well. Altaf talked about performance. I'm going to talk about usage, which is encryption and how the different algorithms are used in the 64-bit processors, which are much more complicated than 32-bit algorithms for security purposes, for encryption, decryption, and this kind of process will get much more complicated and much harder to hack and to breach in the 64-bit processors compared to 32-bit processors.
Definitely, with any new processing capabilities, there are always benefits with new technologies, new findings, new improvements outside of just the 64-bit capabilities that you get within the CPU or even within the SoC. So I definitely agree. I think with both, it depends on the requirement, and one of the requirements could be security, or even how your game is performing. Those are still requirements that a lot of manufacturers have to kind of keep an eye on. The last thing we have here is we have a gentleman that's asking, but unfortunately I don't think they're explaining to us a little bit too much, but they're asking is, will my Note 4 support the 64-bit computing capabilities in the near future? I don't know if they're talking about the Exynos version of the Note 4 or if they're talking about the Qualcomm version, because the answer is yes and no, but that's a debatable question. So I'm sure you guys are aware. Note 4 came out last year. This was before Samsung decided to go one processor for all, and I think it was mostly limited because of the bans in the U.S. I think the U.S. bans required where Qualcomm was the only one capable to get LTE in certain areas, and the Exynos processor wasn't I guess evolved enough. But I guess what are your thoughts are? I mean, I think I think the answer is pretty clear, really. Yes for the Exynos and no for the 805. There's not much you could do.
Right, because it's just the type of the CPU. The CPU is a 32-bit CPU in case of Qualcomm's, and in case of the Exynos, it's a 64-bit CPU. So once you get Lollipop, I think you'll automatically jump to 64-bit if you're on an Exynos version, and you'll get stuck on the 32-bit if you're on the Qualcomm version.
Which is still optimized. I mean, it still runs, as long as they get 5.1 or higher, they should be able to get benefits from the new version of Android.
Of course.
Last but not least, I think the last question was also kind of relating to Android, is what is the latest version of Android?
This is by Musa Gali, as he suggested me on my Google that I should mention his name.
Yes, and I want to say thank you for posting the question, and I guess the easy way to answer this, the current version of Android is Android L. M is in preview, it's not official, and only Nexus-based devices can get M, so L would be the answer for me at least, but I don't know what you guys think.
For now till 2016, I think it's Lollipop, yeah. I can't see my LG G4 getting Android M or Marshmallow, for that matter, until 2016, maybe mid 2016s or something. I have no idea.
LG's, yeah, I would say mid. I think it'll be around the same time as when Samsung releases their update to their system to Android M. But I think, what do you think, Alta? Do you think M is the latest, greatest, and people should start comparing to it, or would you still stick with Lollipop at this point?
Yeah, at this point, I just stick with Lollipop. There's nothing new actually to go for Android M. Just a minor little tweaks. Maybe we need to wait, like Rizo said, mid 2016.
We'll have to see. And I personally, for me at least, with operating systems, the one feature I'm looking forward to for M once it becomes the official one is multi-window. We'll be able to run two things at the same time. It's already present in Lollipop, and if you have custom ROMs, but
I guess
yeah.
Add those features.
I'm sorry. Can you say that again?
I guess LG and Samsung had those features of multi-windows.
Yes, but those are proprietary implementations, so you can't really port those features without all the other. They've embedded it so bad into their system. It's nothing you can transfer from one to the other. Thank you, Senor Riro. Yes.
So yeah, that's basically it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's going to be a catch-up game, really. I think Android really should have had multi-window a long time ago, especially when we've had devices 5.5 inches and higher a lot longer than we can remember now. It's a really nice thing. But
My
Sorry, go
wish
ahead.
would have been that back when Android 3, I forgot its name.
3 point,
Honeycomb, was it?
honeycomb. Yeah, 3.1, I think, 3.2, but yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Back when Android Honeycomb started up for Android tablets, I think at that point they should have gone with multi-window, which would be a very slow feature, but
Very.
it would have been matured by now a lot.
I agree. I agree. When they first sectioned it off, and that was the initial time, because you had the landscape, you had the real estate to be able to work with that. So
Exactly.
definitely. I think that brings us to bring us almost to an end. I want to say thank you both for joining us here. You know, having our first episode. We'll try to see maybe we can brainstorm another title and another subject to discuss on our next episode. I think this is
Maybe
good.
in the next episode we must be getting about the operating systems. We must be discussing about them.
I
Hopefully.
think hopefully we can have a way to break it down to a certain maybe about an hour worth of a discussion, because that could be a very big conversation. Maybe limit the discussion between Android L and KitKat, or I don't know.
Yeah.
That's even that's big. uh, all I know is that if you bring Android L, Riro will get on his discussion, and he will do it. No, I'm just saying. I'm kidding. Anyways, I do want to say thank you very much. I appreciate you, coordinating the time and getting us together. And I will go ahead and post this directly. Obviously, it's automatically posted to my channel, and I'll send you guys the link as soon as it's done rendering. Other than that, do you have any final thoughts, guys? I'll send it over to you, Alta, first. Let me know what you think.
Yeah, this was my first. I was really nervous when I was starting this conversation. As the conversation started, I just feel relaxed. I'm
Mhm.
pretty much happy. The conversation, this debate is very important. That most of the people just think about what is the difference between 32 and 64-bit. Most of them always ask me about them. I just feel like exhausted in explaining them each and every time, each and every new person. Maybe this video helps broadcast everyone, the people who search for it. Maybe they find it useful.
Yeah, definitely. And then, Ryder, what do you think?
I'm hyped a lot. I'm actually hyped because this is the first collaboration between me and any other YouTube channel, which is of course Alt Techness and TK Bay, which is huge. I find this huge. I'm really grateful because we've actually managed to get a guy from the east side of the globe to the west side of the globe and in the middle of the globe, which is me, and it's really awesome to sync our times and sit there for 1 whole hour talking about a subject like that, and I'm really grateful for that. Thank you, TK. Thank you, Alta, for doing this. I'm really amazed.
Thank you, guys. And as usual, I would say with all my videos, I say, as if you like this, please like the video, subscribe to all of our channels, and make sure to stay on top of all of our updates and our videos. Alta is going to be generating some content, tech-related content for you guys in the near future as well. I always love the facepalm series on Riro's channel. Anyways, that's just it's like my little bit of comedy. I love that, and then I'll try to keep doing also my thing, and then hopefully we'll do another video soon. And of course, if you have any ideas for subjects, be it the operating system or anything else, leave them in the comments. Hit us up on Google Plus. Our information will be there, and I'll update the comments section or the video itself to give our Google Plus links.
Yeah,
And
of
with
course.
that, I want to say thank you very much. To you guys, I'll say good night. To me, I have an entire new day to start. But that's the beauty of the text. Like you said, it's the ability to have a conversation across the world at the same time. And it's as if you guys are sitting with me in my office and we're just talking. And it is like that.
Right, right. So yeah,
Anyways,
see you guys.
see you guys. You have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.